You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie. He's over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, we managed to get a hold of some Francois Legault comments in an English scrum today. This has now been several days since he talked about anything, including the Eric Kerr situation or anything else. So our producer, Brian Callistar, has put it together, Jim. So instead of listening to all the Q&A, here are the highlights, if you will, from Premier Legault's address today during that scrum. Brian?
I think it was important to first table all the data. But right now, with the new data, I cannot justify because the data I had before showed that the new data regarding delays, we have to face reality.
That's right, Jim. The data is going to make this government face realities. So there you go.
I got to tell you took me short on that because I thought for sure Brian was going to play Edith Piaf saying "No, je ne regrette rien."
Oh, that would have been good.
Oh,
okay.
That's good. I was expecting da, da, da.
Or I could have just got data from the movie. But anyway, data. That's going to be the excuse, Jim, for this going forward? I mean, I don't think a lot of people are going to buy that.
I don't think there is an excuse, guys. I don't think this is over. I know this is the way things usually work. Something happens, Legault holds a presser, and everything sort of disappears, with the next day's dawn. I don't think that's going to happen. I think there are MNAs who walked out of that meeting this morning who were still angry, who still have to answer their constituents. I think that you saw a bit of light appearing between Premier Legault and his hand-picked star candidate, former Radcan journalist Martine Biron, because before going to the meeting, she said, well, listen, we should get some kind of compensation. He apparently did not like that. It was raised during his press conference. He basically said that's not how it works, that maybe that's how it worked in the old days. All of Quebec's regions are equal, which I think probably had a few eyes rolling during the press conference. But all that said, this is a huge problem for Francois Legault. And, maybe things, perhaps we're so used to having our gratification so instantly dealt with on the internet, we forget sometimes things take time. But, it wouldn't be the first time discontented MNAs or discontented government officials have leaked. Maybe we won't see any blowback on this today or next week or even next month. But down the road, I think a lot of people whose lives have been made way more complicated because MNAs are complaining, they're getting tons of emails, lots of angry calls. And to be fair, so they should. They are the representatives of that government in those ridings. This is all clearly a smoke and mirrors game. And they're not going to let him get away with it. So we'll see how long he'll be able to keep his cool on this. We'll see how long he can sort of wake up every morning and figure he doesn't have to look over his shoulder at his caucus. But you'll recall, guys, when this election was over, when the dust had settled and Francois Legault had seen his seat count go up from 78 to 90, I said that can be a problem because that's a lot of people to keep watch on. That's a lot of people to try and deal with. And there, I was just talking about personalities. Here, it's clear of a very legitimate beef, not with the government, but with Francois Legault, not with policy, but the way this government essentially, to a certain extent, BS'd the public about this project, but also used them. They understand. They got elected on the strength of this promise. This promise is being revealed to have been nothing more than an illusion, that there was no way this was going to happen, and essentially they were as hoodwinked as their constituents. So as I say, story's not over, and I think down the road you may see a little more friction between Francois Legault and his caucus. But as I say, this is a post-pandemic problem that Francois Legault could have solved in some manner, but instead he fell back on the old tactic of doubling down. He's not going to say he's sorry. Well, we'll see how well that works.
No inkling of anybody jumping ship and heading over to Duham's side?
Oh, Duhem would have a better indication of that than me. But quite frankly, I'm not really sure there's enough here, unless there might be some MNAs out there who are getting a lot of pressure from within their riding to perhaps reconsider their political allegiance. You know, I would see more people sitting as independents than going to Eric Duhem, because it's clear that Eric Duhem basically needs he needs his pass card to get into the National Assembly.
Yes.
But if some people might be old-fashioned and say, listen, I can't continue to serve with this government, which, quite frankly, got me elected under false pretenses.
So not expecting a coup, but if there are a bunch of, I guess, MNAs in those ridings around the Quebec City area who are very upset, and I think he was asked about that today as well, because he will have to sort of make up with them, right, to apologize for this. But I'm wondering, Jim, did you see what happened today between the Premier and Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, or this whole blowout?
I didn't see the blowout, no.
So apparently the Premier got up at one point and was basically calling out. He said, what would happen, or who would I see sitting in front of me today if the Camille Laurent riding had not been stolen?
Oh, yeah, I saw that. I saw that. Yeah.
What's the purpose of that?
Well, you know, we've sort of noticed that François Legault has a thin skin, a short temper, and maybe doesn't have the most Olympian view of how can I put it, dealing with his adversaries. And, you know, the suggestion that the only reason you're here is because somebody got caught stealing brochures.
Right.
Well, you know, it's he certainly knows how to get a rise out of people, but I don't think that's going to do him any good either. I think, and perhaps that might be a hint, that outburst might be a hint of just how much this situation is getting to him. I mean, it's going to be interesting. It's early days. I mean, good Lord, it's only Tuesday. If this keeps being in his face, if people keep raising it, if there are separate interviews with disgruntled MNAs who are saying, listen, I wasn't happy with what happened here, you may see a much larger and perhaps more devastating explosion down the road. But I cannot overestimate the extent of damage that this has done to the CAQ. And as I say, I would be so happy if somebody got a poll in the fields right now, just to gauge the government's credibility. But this, you can throw as much lipstick on this situation as you want. It's still a pig, but is it a pig that'll still be grunting and chasing François Legault in the weeks and months to come? Quite frankly, I think so.
By the way, Natasha and I were talking. You were asking, Natasha, if we've heard anything from Bernard Drinville after he stormed out of the National Assembly, right? If he'd apologized or anything. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, he has turned into a regular eager beaver. He came out of that caucus meeting today. We're going to get that tunnel built. I think it's great. And here's what else I'm going to do. I'm going to, renovate schools in my riding. He gave this whole list of great and marvelous projects that he was going to do in his riding. Now, was he trying to shame Legault into making sure the funds are allocated for this because he's kind of like doing damage control for his boss? I don't know. But he was perhaps one of the more Pollyanna-like takes to come out of that meeting. But there were far more clouds than rays of sunshine, let me assure you.
So as we speak, 723 customers in Montreal without power. You're saying hydro, Green Line bridges, anything that isn't falling apart? I mean, it's been rock and roll.
Even with the Metro, right? The Metro's on the verge of turning 60. And we've had issues before. For the Green Line, when the news first broke, I was a little bit nervous because I remember, 15, 20 years ago, a whole section of de Maisonneuve it wasn't a pothole, it wasn't a sinkhole, it simply collapsed.
I remember.
I don't know if you guys remember that. They had to block off the street for about a week. The whole thing, because that whole section of the city is honeycombed with various projects, right? So that sort of, my first thought when I saw the Green Line story last night was, oh my gosh, what's going on here? But you look at it, and now, I even knew when this Cascade blackout occurred, I remembered once again about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the same thing happened. I think it may have been up at Churchill Falls, and the whole province went out in an afternoon. But things it's so funny because we talk about these things, and of course, there's inevitably, we talk to an expert and they say, well, it's a matter of maintaining the system. But man, oh man, it's like every system we have is in need of maintenance.
Totally.
And you're kind of wondering, not only when do we stop having to do this, when do we reach at least sort of like an up-to-date situation, but my God, when do we start and how much is it going to cost?
How much is it going to cost? Yeah, well, leave it at that. James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Adam.